Hello folks, Brew here. Here are my Amonkhet standard brews. I'll give you 8 of them. The numbers in each build are not solidified, they can be tuned and altered and just made more flexible according to what you expect. I am gonna, in fact, make also an article about most important threats and answers to them in standard, so watch out for that, and I'll also link the lists of the builds in each of these websites, so my DAX collections, and so that you can actually see them later on yourself, not on the video, but just open the pages and so on. So first up is a Red Room Madness Beats. Basically everybody's been talking about this deck, and I think it's really damn powerful, and Sweet Moshus had a pretty nice article about it on Channel Fireball, and I think everybody has a build of it, and I think it's one of the kind of obvious and straightforward decks that people will have in mind with regard to this set. So yeah, we need some one drops, but I actually think that Scar Mage doesn't really belong here. You don't really need it, but Adept, the one that actually pumps for all the madness stuff, is actually interesting, and you need that. But I also like the one that actually gives haste to all your guys, because you can cast it on turn 1 and turn 2, cast this 2-drop Brawler, the 4/3 that makes you discard the cards when it enters. So you discard, like, let's say Hydra, speed up the Brawler, attack for 4 in turn 2, turn 3 cast a God, let's say it's still survived, let's say it's still there, then speed up the God, it can attack, etc., it's alive, bash in for more, in turn 4 basically flashback Hydra, speed it up, and so on. So I like the Adept, and I like the one that speeds up. I'm not sure which one's better, and how many of each do you play. There is a chance that you just play 6 of those, I mean 4 Adepts and 2 of those, but Neonate is actually interesting here, especially if you go hard on Madness and Cycling and all that jazz. So that's a thing. So that's the vampire that we saw in Modern Dredge, and then Standard Dredge, let's say. Then Manticore is actually pretty interesting because it's actually like a fling on a stick that you can also embalm, so that's a nice ability. I think you should have at least one in your 75 just because it's so powerful, and you can just, discard it and embalm it. So that's pretty sick. Brawler just an all-star in this deck, and then you need more 2-drops, and I've opted for 3 copies of the Noose Constrictor. That's the 2-mana snack that, has reach and becomes bigger when you discard. Maybe you want actually 4 of those just to have, enough of 2-drops. And I think those should be the ones, the first ones in your deck. Then we have 1 copy of the Dry One and 3 copies of the Green God. Maybe should be more of those. There's a chance of that. Singleton Summoton here, just to pressure Planeswalkers more, and just to have a flashy, sweet card. It's a legendary, so just one off. I'm not even entirely sure it's needed in the deck, so you'll be a judge of that. You definitely play 4 Hydra, I think. It's just too good. Maybe you can be fine with 3, but the card is just too strong, I think, in this deck, in this shell. Incorrigible Views, well, if you are like really all in on Madness, then it's probably pretty good. It's another free drop also, but if you run like more of the gods, then you probably don't need it. Also, if you run more copies of Hazoret or Ronus, you're basically a discard Madness deck, so you can just discard redundant copies, right? Bringer might not be awesome main deck, maybe you just played Sideboard, so that's a thing. Lightning Axe is just your premium removal, but if you're not that big on Madness and emptying your hand, maybe you don't really need it. I could see definitely, you know, shocks and sprays, and also the 2-mana, like, well, Volcanic Hammer, basically. That one too. Favor, I don't know, it just was on my mind very quickly, but I think you don't really need it in this deck. Tormenting Voice over Reunion because you don't want to discard like all of the stuff. Insult Injury probably should be somewhere in the 75 just because of how well it synergizes with the deck and how much damage you can do. Just extra push. Arlen Core potentially can fit in the deck, but it's not needed, so just putting it here as an option. Lightning X enables Fury Temper, so that's a very important thing. That's why maybe it's too important in the deck and you can't really cut it. Tracker in the sideboard just for more gas. Not sure if you need Serp apart, but it's a nice option. You probably want Sweltering Suns for zombies and humans, and then maybe not mirror as such because, well, in the mirror it's not that good. But against some aggro decks, I think it's nice. Now here's Rev, just your third Suns, basically, but in this deck it's pretty cool because you can discard a bunch of things and split the damage, and your stuff is untouched, as I believe. Manglehorn for vehicles, 6 cents, well, could be another track or a card similar to that, could be the Vizier. Harsh Mentor just is a nice option. Then the problem is that you don't run Y, so your artifact hate is not that flexible, but because you're also like aggro burn deck, then you kind of Deliverance fits the bill because you know it cycles, so if you don't have a good target on board, you can cycle it just to draw into more gas just to finish up the game. And the split card, the red green one, they haven't something. This is a nice option against flyers, and you can also instant it for 0 on 1 and then just like flashback it for the ground guys. Probably pretty cool in the mirror. But then again, another thing that's goes into my head is that you want to have answers to your opponents, gods or something like that, and I don't know how do you answer that in the mirror just yet, except for just trying to burn down your opponent before, and maybe have a way to spam the board so you have like a bunch of blockers, but then Ronas has an ability to give trample to your guys, so that's a problem. So if you can solve those, that's cool. Moving on, Blurred Spells. First of all, there is no Bedlam Reveler in this stack, but it might actually very easily be here. Yeah, in this deck actually Scar Mage does stuff, and not just because it's Provis, but for other reasons too. There are 2 copies of Adept, they're kind of mixed up in this visual view though. You have again the X plus Temper for the bursts and clean up their board, plus it synergizes with Drake and Thing and Ice just because those are cheap spells. You have a bunch of Shocks and Sprays too, some Lightnings, a bunch of cheap counter spells. I'm not sure if you want Elimination, but it cycles for 1 and then it's instant slash sorcery for the Drakes too. You have repulse, reduce, basically the bounce the attacker tapped guy and draw a card. Might not be needed in this deck. I know it's the, wait, it's not that one, it's the split one, which is basically 3 mana league, and the second half is basically freeze a land of theirs. Maybe not needed in this deck, it's just a speculation, sorry for that. One of Tower in the Cyber just because you have many spells and actually Burning Face is what you kind of want to do with creatures or spells. And Salt Injury, well, maybe not needed, but again, you have burn potential and doubling that up might not be that bad. Negates, Sensors, a bunch of like cheap counters that either cycle or just very good in general. Then on the sideboards, extra removal, extra counter spells, extra sweepers, extra tower for reach. Harsh Mentor is probably viable. Singleton Javeliner for creature decks. Commit Memory because it's a switch spell in certain cases, as well as the Brutal Explosion. Yeah, so you can experiment with this deck. I think there are quite a few ways to build this, but let's move on. Monoblack zombies. I first thought that you could be, black-white zombies because of all the synergy and flavor, but then again, turns out you can't really. Um, except that you really want those sideboard cards. So only for the sideboards, I could see splashing white in this deck. And then if you think of black-red aggro, that's a kind of different deck. It's gonna look quite different. Still share some cards, some similarities, but it will be different. Um, I'm not sure what's better, but I think Monoblack version is still viable. So I have one copy of the guide just because it basically synergizes well with the deck and it's a cheap body. Um, it switches on itself, and you can switch it on with ballistas, for examples, of which there could be four of. Of course, the premium one drops for this deck. Of course, the Scroungers, Belcher is your main beatdown stick. Then you could be playing 4 Fatal Pushes. I think I've put in 1 into the sideboard. I'm not sure. Yeah, I think you should be running 4 in this deck. Never is your Ruinous Path. It's just that it has an upside in the mirror match, I think. Sanitarium, just for extra discards, for extra loot. You can afford to play Abbey in this monocolor deck. Key just to push in the Pickers and Belchers and so on. You have the reanimation package basically. In addition to New Wonder, you have your old friends Haunted Dad and Price Amalgam. So you have that. Then okay, you have all those removals, so numbers could be definitely tweaked. I think you can run 4th Ballista. I think you can run 4th Push. Maybe Key is not really needed, but kind of wanted extra discard outlet here. Even though you have Creep Breaker, and then you have Haunted Dad, but yeah, one way why Splash and Red here could be like real good, because you get extra ways to actually loot away all that stuff. You don't really have to, but it wouldn't hurt, I think. Yeah, even though Sanitarium is cool, but you know, might not be enough. Might not be enough. So this never maybe can be pushed towards sideboard just to free up space for extra discards, for extra keys, for example. Something like that. Yeah. And then 4th push, just to enable Pikers more. It's one of the best cards in the deck also. Sideboard, some discards, some removal, some Planeswalkers for a longer game, Pariah for wide strategies, a card for Mirror, or basically 2 extra cards for Mirror, sort of. Also, another good part about being Black Rads for this deck is also because you get Lightning Axe and Temper, and you get Magma Spray for Mirror Match. So consider those options and what you want to build. And so, moving on, this is Mardu control. Basically, we all know about Mardu vehicles at this point, but what if you want to go control with that? Because, well, there are some interesting cards. The mana base is kind of straightforward. Okay, so you have ballistas just because, like, well, you need to fight Aggro and Sahili. Kalitas is sweet in this deck with a bunch of cheap removal. Angela Sanctions, just a bullet, as well as Goblin Dark Dwellers, Glorybringer, and regular Kurkal. So a bunch of good value 5 drops for different purposes, but with Tormenting Voice you can kind of sculpt your hand. So you have Push, you have Shock, you have Oath of Chandra, you have quite a few Planeswalkers in the deck to trigger Oath. That also kind of shoots down their Planeswalkers too. Dwellers actually flashback a lot of cool stuff in here. Then Library of the Heart, because I think it's a better discard spell for main deck, and you have Transgress in the sideboard. Chandra pings their Planeswalkers, accelerates you, kills their stuff, etc. 2 mana removals, more Planeswalkers, New Gideon, Painful Truce to draw more, a bunch of exile stuff for the gods, and Gideons, and so on. So yeah, uh, the Planeswalker suit can be shuffled definitely. So you have extra life gain and extra bullet with Lindval and Hulk and Fumigate intervention for the combo, Wolf of Liliana for Mardu again, Sweltering Suns for white decks, Path for Planeswalkers, extra draw, extra life gain removal with Alliance, Current and Field for Gods and Stop, Declaration Stone also, same thing. Emulating Glare for red-green and black-red, basically also too. Outcast for mid-range matchups, Authority for the combo. So yeah, very sweet deck, I think. Can do a bunch of different things. Moving on to fun stuff. This is what I had a while ago before Amonkhet. So this is Abzan Control, basically. That tries to abuse the Renegade Rallier. With Oath of Nissa, Concoction, Grove. Then you have a few Planeswalkers. Of Linani is sweet. Actually, I don't mind it in this deck. Game 1, because, well, provides blockers against 4-color, because they have a bunch of 3/2s and 2/2s. Fine against Mardu, very good against black-green, I think. Field, again, for all kinds of stuff. Now it's actually, again, pretty important. To the Slaughter for all kinds of things. Also good against gods. Let's say you cleared up their other stuff, and then you can to the Slaughter a god, so that's pretty cool interaction. All sorts of removal. Then Rallier, of course, bringing different stuff back. Mostly dig spells, sometimes Advocates, which are pretty good as a beat stick in this deck. Felder Flickers, Oath of Nissa, and Planeswalkers. That's why it's just a one-off. Kalitas just to gain life and stabilize the board. You have some a decent amount of removal in this deck. Planeswalker suit can be shuffled definitely. Fumigate is super important in this deck because with no red you don't have a bunch of cheap interaction, so you need not one but two Fumigates main deck, and I only sided out against Mardu. I keep it in against Black Green and Saheeli. Because I take it out against blue control decks. Not really satisfied with 3-mana Lily in this deck. Doesn't really do a whole lot. It can bring back Advocates and Ralliers, but it's just not enough for this deck at least. And yeah, it's probably gonna be the 3-mana Gideon in this deck if I decide to run it again. Ballista could be main, could be side. If you don't have it, then you can run Authority of the consoles, but this is the slot for that matchup. Guanti for mid-range, Green Warden for blue control, Hulk and Lindvala against black-green and such, Transgress against like slow matchups and combos and controls, yeah. Extra Planeswalkers, extra removal for gods and Planeswalkers, and so on. So that's it. So yeah. This is what I'm probably gonna run meantime while I'll be figuring out which Abzan version I want to play. This is basically blue-white Sram deck, so it should have less streams and maybe should have some copies of the new Cycle Land too. Yeah, I should have more Spires, but this is what I have in paper, basically. But definitely streaming is kind of awkward in this deck, you should have more Spires. So this deck has 10 Cheerios, 2 Ornithopters. Map is really important in this deck because you have pretty low land count, and it synergizes with all the improvised stuff. So Reservoir is how you win, and Stature is how you kind of go off, like really go off. Couple of Weirs main just to find the Reservoirs or the Statuary on instant speed. Doesn't really have good bullets. I mean, this build doesn't have good bullets in the sideboard for the tutor. Rebuke is just, you need some interaction main deck for combo and whatever. Outcome just how you basically go off. Playing Force Ramps because I always want to draw it and cast it on turn 2, and it has a tendency to just die with all those fatal pushes and all kinds of things. Cranes to dig for stuff. Engineer just to pro-draw. Only to expertise because, well, I valued cheaper cards in this deck a bit more than the third expertise, but I won't blame you for running third one. It's basically a combo piece. It's more of a tool to go off than an interaction for this deck. Authority for the combo because Ballista is not that good on this deck. Construction is basically your plan B, your secondary win condition. You can sometimes beat down with your 2-drops, but that's rare. Fumigate for all aggros, mid-range, Queller, catch on all counter guy. Crash for all kinds of matchups, actually not that bad against 4-color, because unlike the Engulf, which you can't really play because you're splashing, this bounces off their Planeswalkers, so it buys you way more time than you think it is. It also gives you this 8/8, so that's pretty cool too. So they have to deal with that first, otherwise it might just kill them. And a couple of negates in the sideboard just to round up the countersuit. Right, and this is a more serious deck, work in progress, Abzan vehicles. I ran something like this, and some friends of mine too. So basically your vehicles deck, but instead of red you have green. That gives you some value. Previously it's mostly a derailleur that can bring back the Aristocrats. Yeah, pretty usual cards. In here, Abzan is just great for mirrors and for all kinds of matchups. Ronus is actually pretty interesting because your Gideons switch it off actually, then Hartikiran switched it on, so that's pretty cool. And yeah, given your stuff trample is pretty amazing too. Just converts inspectors into late game real threats. Selfless just to protect your guys and also synergizes with failure. Push, of course, in defense is something to really, push the game in your favor. You don't have disintegration, which is a big loss, but with this you can, keep the pressure going against combo, for example. Both Gideons. So now your hearts are actually like really insane, and also they switch on Ronas. Yeah. Concoction basically synergizes with the Relier, and it's also helps you to fill up the grave for Relier again, and then you can bin some Scroungers, so that's a neat interaction. Not always you're gonna get that, but anyway, and it kills at instant speed basically the hearts, and also kills Felidars and all that jazz, so it's against combo again. Sideboard is a work in progress. I'm pretty sure there are a bunch of cards that shouldn't be here. Gisela was good in vehicle mirrors and against black-green. Gonti for mid-range, Talia for the combo, sometimes mirrors, trackers. Well, used to have more in the deck, but now I needed to free up some space. Also, I don't think it's that important anymore. But, well, 4-color heal is very happy running those. Making for all kinds of things, including guts. Well, Ballista should now be a different card, so this was what was there previously. Fumigate's gonna be good against the field, I feel like a lot. Declaration gonna be even more important because of the gods. I liked really a couple of suns in the board just to kill opponent's planeswalkers. Really liked it against Mardu plus Sideboard because kills their Gideons and all the planeswalkers. Just draws your cards as well. Better than Obnixilis for this deck, I think. Even though it's 6 mana, but the games tend to go along plus sideboards with matchups like this. Anissa just also grinding, helps you kill their planeswalkers too if they believe it's more or less defenseless. Just kill some blockers and attack for 5 into their Gideon. Sky Sovereign flagship for similar reason. Really awesome card in against other vehicle decks and also against 4 color. Really love it. That's why I like play 2 copies. But yeah. You can't really see, I believe, the maybe board in here. So that's why I'm gonna switch with this deck off to the normal view, because maybe board for this deck actually features a lot of important cards. So we have an extra, yeah, not extra. Angel of Sanctions could be in this deck, but unlike Avacyn, it's not that like um, flexible, or let's say smooth. Harvester could be a thing. It's normally was in the sideboard, but I wasn't really impressed by it. But live gain is a big deal with that card, I guess. Mind Sensor if you run into a lot of Travers, the Wilvenval decks. Piker could be a main deck thing, actually. And just because of Ballista and Fatal Push and stuff like that, just a cheap threat. But maybe there simply is not enough space for this card here. Cast Out just to catch them all. Forsake the Worldly is pretty sick too. That's probably what's gonna be used instead of the Abolescence in this deck. It's pretty crazy because Forsake is actually instant. And for 1 mana more, you get rid of basically anything. And it cycles, so that's pretty cool. Intervention for the combo, but maybe you don't really need it. Maybe an extra Talia is simply better. Actually, yeah, so I have 1 Talia here, but yeah, might be a second one. But I don't know. Maybe intervention is much better in control. And in here, maybe you just want like flexible cards like Talia. Kambal was something that my friend's been very happy with. I wasn't really sure I wanted it. I don't have much experience with it, but you may try. Manglethorn for vehicle stacks just should be pretty sweet. Yeah, kind of doing similar thing like Talia, but we'll see. Talia actually is interesting for um, both vehicles and combos, so that could be the tiebreaker. Starfinch is just an interesting card because you get some chump blockers and then you get to flashback this and you know, kill something really important. Yeah, but the problem is that it's sorcery speed, but you have a bunch of food to flashback this card either way because of the tokens and specters and scroungers. And then if you nail it with concoction or something like that, then you're really happy, I guess, because you actually get extra value. Judok Monster is something that a friend who originally gave me the original build played and was happy about, but I don't know, never really, this card never spoke to me. I could understand Compal, but I have my doubts about this being actually a thing, even in this deck. Okay, last deck for this time, so again Abzan. Again an aggro, but a more dirtly, crazier version. So this is basically Abzan Aristocrats, where Abzan monitor combo deck, spiced up with new tools. Yeah, so you pretty much have to run Ballista or something that interacts with the combo main deck and at the same time flexible. Talia could be in this slot too. Maybe you just run 1-1 or just find more space for Talia in addition to Ballista. Yeah, so you win basically with Cutthroat, Displacer, and Monitor. When you have all of them, you just flick your Monitor, sometimes with just those tokens you get from it, and then you just drain away your opponent. So in order to sometimes use the ability on the Displacer when you don't have Monitor or you don't have the tokens anymore, which you can also get from the Sifter. So you have the Abbey and every hub. So you can do that. Recruiter, just a cool thing. You can, if it flips, all your stuff is cheaper. I mean creatures, then can dig for extra creatures. Try just you need some ramp in turn 1 plays and some mana dorks. Look, Sanctions, just a silver bullet that you can tutor in this deck or dig for. And you can also embalm it, so if you mill it with something, so you can embalm it to get rid of like a Kalitas, for example, which kills this deck. Bontu is just a flexible tool that you can tutor for, and the ability is pretty strong, of course. It costs mana, but it's a good mana sink actually. Nihini is your sacrifice outlet, basically, of choice, because the activation is free. Rallier is just a sweet card for this deck, but the deck is not really centered. Bringing back like Cutthroats and Recruiters and stuff is pretty cool. But yeah, there are not that many good targets for it in this deck, so that's why just one copy. But you might not really need it all that much, at least in this build. Vizier is just a good tutor target and extra Prodro, just not to run out of gas. Maybe should be just in the sideboard for slow post-hybrid games, something like that. But yeah, you have 22 creatures, which is not a few. Push, because you need to interact with the heart early in this deck to buy time to assemble the combo. Grapple to dig, so the digging suit actually in this deck can be altered, and it could be different stuff. So the numbers are not exactly right. If you put in more ballistas, not just 2, maybe you can get away running more traverse, and this way maybe it will find more stuff. You could play more evolution, but I can't find space. You need a lot of things in here. You want to play at least 1 right, but I don't want to play more than that. Concoction is just your fatal push number 5, basically. Also synergize with the deck a little bit. Not exactly needed, but I don't mind it in this deck. You can actually dig for it with the vessel, but then again, yeah, you can rebuild this a little bit to justify playing 4 copies of Traverse and stuff like that. Could be playing more off of Nissa, but again, so this all depends on the build. So these are your options for digging and so on. Numbers could vary. Throne is just sweet because, okay, it synergizes really a lot with the right, but then again, you can just suicide a bunch of things in when you don't have a sacrifice outlet, and then drain them out with the Cutthroat. So that works pretty well, for example. Bontu just makes quite a few of your creatures cheaper, but mainly it's just extra drain engine, basically. Sideboard, just a bunch of bullets. This deck can actually get a lot of value out of Dusk Dawn, for example. Sometimes you need Fumigate, so it could be a second Dusk Dawn, but the life gain is actually a pretty huge deal for this deck sometimes. And I actually don't mind all of your stuff dying, but I will see, maybe Dusk Dawn is just better overall. But previously I used to run like a couple of Fumigates in Sideboard of this deck. Lost Legs is just an option against combo, same for Authority, but you can run Talias, and you can probably do that because, well, you can run both, of course. But Tali is fetchable. Yeah, but you don't apply that much pressure on Sahila deck, so that's why playing Authority as a one-off, as a complement to the second tally might be a good idea. Cast out just to catch all cards, same for Unmaking. To the Slaughter, well, depending on the build, you can actually Delirium this up, and then it's pretty sweet. You might want more than one Forsake in this deck, but then again, there are not that many things that you should be cared about. Self is just to protect yourself against opposing sweepers. Hulk just as a bullet target to kill something like Kalitas. Linvala just to, buy some time and stabilize against red-green or black-red. Same for Ishkana. Green Warden, awesome for against blue control decks. Just to, rebuy stuff. Mind Sensor is just a good option, but might not be needed again. Depends on the meta game, of course. When thinking about all those 5s and 6 drops, think about the fact that if you have just a good 4 on the board, then you can just evolution and yeah, and get those 6 drops out of evolution. So you're basically a lot of the time not paying full 6 to actually cast them or get them on board. Um, this deck might want another good 4 in addition to Vizier, just for evolution purposes. I'm not sure what I want. The Gearsmith just didn't really impress me, so you can run the 4 mana make 2 science. Synergizes with the deck, gives you chump blockers and stuff. But then again, where is the space for all that? But it depends. So there could be a lot of cool ways to build this up, but the problem is that I don't think this deck is super competitive, but it's a lot of fun and really interesting to play it. And yeah, you could sometimes combo kill them, but don't rely on that. You're basically just spamming the board and trading with their stuff and draining them life by life. So okay guys, hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time. Check the links in the description below. Until the next sale, bye.